This is a weekly wrap-up presented by the Conversation Project, and I am Jay Cleveland Payne, presenting you the actual weekly wrap-up. These are conversational news topics that we covered in our feeds on Facebook and X from Friday, August the 9th to Friday, August 16th, 2024. And these stories were some of the most talked about that we actually produced for you in our Things You Might Not Have Heard podcast. We'll explain the whole feed stuff and how we get things going forward. This will be a quick, breezy run through the stories, not a deeper dive that we do for the daily show, but just the 12 of the stories that we picked from the large number of stories you presented in the daily show, and you gave us most responses either in the actual engagement, which got us on there, or lots of comments, which we'll have a lot of commentary going through here. More information about how the whole thing works, just go to our website. This is theconversationproject.com, and email us for questions, comments, and complaints at our email address, theconversationinbox@gmail.com. We'll have a brief part where we'll try to sell you something. We'll have some promo stuff at the end. But right now, let's get to some of the stories that you thought were most engaging. And if you're new to us, these are stories that people from across the internet and folks in our news nerd community get a chance to engage in. We'll explain that part when we get to the promotion part in just a bit, how you engage in them and how you actually tell us what stories to get in on the venue. So let's get in on the countdown. Not no longer really countdown, but these are 12 stories, not in particular order, no particular day they're put it in, but these are stories for this last week, ending on this Saturday as we record this, the week ending August the 17th, 2024. Our first story in the lineup, remember this is not by any means on the engagement, whatever, but we'll kind of tell you how they go, is this headline here. It reads, "Battle rages in Russia as Kremlin struggles to repel surprise Ukraine incursion." This story has grown over the week as basically over the past weekend, and it's the early part of last week, the Ukrainians invaded Russia. Now, they're not taking over anything. They've got a nice plot of land, but essentially their counteroffensive for people in being invaded by Russia is to start eking into lands of Russian territory. And they've encountered little resistance in some cases because people that were sitting there at that line weren't the best soldiers. The best soldiers were inside the lines of Ukraine and not near the border defending it. So because of that, Ukrainians have been able to take a whole lot of land in the inskirts, just right at the borderlands of Russia. Now, remember, they're fighting mostly both Ukrainians and Russians with smaller weapons and drones and things like that. Putin has tossed out the nuclear weapon options, but obviously he's not going that way just for little Ukraine, because that's even a bit too far for him. But we see this is not quite the major spring offensive that we were expecting going forward. This is not any major push attack to take over Russia or even in the war. They're basically working towards a ceasefire here as well. But when you're able to engage your invaders by invading their space, it makes a difference. We'll see how this plays out going forward with Ukraine and how much they can hold on this territory. We're rushing and bringing its troops from the southern lines back up north to actually take things over, or whether it's just sort of just a fluke in the oil, the moment that's going for in this incursion, in this war. We're going to call it a war at the moment. Our second story in the list for this weekend goes back to the grand announcement, re-engagement, reinstallation, if you will, of Donald Trump to the X platform, or the Twitter platform. I guess it was still Twitter, but when he was bounced from the platform, he came on with Elon Musk himself for an interview to basically talk about himself, and it wasn't good. It was a 40-minute delay. He complained about the delay by the the black journalists because their equipment didn't work, but didn't complain to Elon Musk. He went even longer. So you got that. Musk said there was a DDoS attack, a denial of service attack. No one said, and it wasn't that. Just basically, just like last time with DeSantis, it was just bad audio and bad connections and bad stuff. And it reminded us a lot of the DeSantis thing that happened back in the day. This happened on this past week. This was a I'm just filming this. This was a 2-hour ramble fest where he would stay on task and then go off, and then Musk was just sort of kind of giggle and go along with it. Musk playing the role of an actual journalist here, but not journaling very well, not asking very questions, just letting Trump just ramble like he does. In fact, then one of the biggest parts about this is there's now an investigation into these guys because one little quip that Trump said about firing union workers, and Musk kind of go green, like, yeah, that might not be a bad idea. Now the unions are a bit worried, and now they're investigating those comments as if it's something that Trump might actually do. Not great for a world for Donald Trump, who's not doing so well since he had the great showing up into the part where he actually had the show at the Republican National Convention, surviving an assassination attempt, coming in with a new, unified, nicer guy, and then deciding, yeah, I'm not being nice. I'm going to do every nasty thing going forward and a couple worse things and look like a fool in the process. The fool part is my words. So you can take that whatever you want to. Comments can be sent to me anytime you want to via email or comments in this presentation. The third story in the list today is the Borderlands story. Borderlands, not the actual border of our lands, but Borderlands, the movie, which debuted with Rotten Tomatoes score of 0%. Nobody likes it. Anyone who's seen it says they don't like it. The domestic box office so far is pretty terrible. This was supposed to be my foray for me personally into the actual world. I've seen the game commercials on TV. I've seen some clips of some gameplay. I've read the descriptions of how the storylines go. And I'm just not a gamer. Don't have time to do with that. But this was going to be my foray into this. And of course, Kevin Hunt's another guy I don't know. Kevin Hart and Jack Black being part of the cast, and Jamie Lee Curtis as well. But apparently, the movie is just terrible. It's terrible on all ends. It does not really lend itself to give any actual credence to the real spirit of the game. Is just sort of a just very, very bad skin of the game, if you will, and nobody seems to like it. That is it. It's not making any money, not making any good reviews. People are just basically tearing it apart, and apparently it should be torn apart because this is one of the worst video game movies in a long time. They're not saying quite ever. There's some really, really, really bad ones, but this one is going back to the good old days of really bad video game adaptations. At number 4, a story that got a whole lot of response this week because you guys apparently either wanted some more Spice Girls or really, 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 really are tired of them and wish they would go back to the 90s or even be not be existed. Go back in time and make the time machine and, take out the Spice Girls before they existed. However, the reunion that may have been happening, they were basically planning some tours, some dates to go back on the road, back on stage because nostalgia is the thing. Everyone loves the 90s these days. Not happening. It's not happening because of two people. It's what usually happens in the bands, and when the bands can't get together, they find somebody else to replace them. You don't like the drummer anymore, you find a new drummer. You find a new vocalist if you want to. Guess what? If your girl group is 5 girls that invited the world to Spice Girls and Girl Power, and all the girls don't want to have that power together, you can't Spice Girls together. So lack of spice happening with Mel B, Melanie Brown, and Jerry Halliwell, refusing to even be in the same room. They won't be on the same stage. They won't practice. They won't get together. They can't get along to get this thing done. This feud between them has been going for a while. So it's no surprise that they're not liking each other. The surprise is that they don't like money enough to get along well enough to do a tour, making the fans a bit sad, making the other girls a little bit sad because they probably like to hang out together and make some money on the tour, get on the nostalgia as well. But it's not going to happen. And you can blame Mel B and Jerry Halliwell, which one you actually want to blame. Your favorite Spice or your least favorite Spice can go towards that hatred, that venom. Yeah, we're still getting used to the controls, so bear with me. Let's go to the next story now. This one controls the script. There we go. Banksy's London Zoo mural offers clue to why wild animals have been appearing all over the city. For a few weeks, Banksy has had some originals of various animals in various places, in phone booths, on bridges, just all over the place. Just animals, just there. All of a sudden you see a Banksy and it's an animal and people are taking pictures of it. They're doing what they can to enjoy it. But no one kind of knew what the clue was to what the theme was, why the animals, why and where. The where may still be sort of just a convenience, but the why comes from his final mural from this series, we'll call it. At the London Zoo, there's a door, and at the door, Banksy posted his last photo. There's a gorilla pulling up essentially the doorway and pulling up the opening so that animals are coming out. You see a seal, you see some birds, you see some eyeballs, whatever else coming out. Essentially, Banksy and the gorilla are releasing animals from the zoo, and the zoo animals are going anywhere they can. And that's the theme of this Banksy batch of murals, if you will. A bit of livelihood, bit of lovely stuff. And what's really cool about this is the zoo wants to preserve this actual mural itself. I'm not sure how well they'll do well to keep the other ones around town, but the zoo is going to do what it can to preserve this thing. It probably could be worth something in the grand theme of stuff. But they're going to do what they can to keep this going and get some more love for Banksy and for themselves, if you will. Now, let's go to our story that's number 6. This one is going to be an interesting one that comes about. As the NFL football season is ramping up, ESPN has fired 2 people. We may not call them top analysts, but they've been top in the world of NFL sports coverage in the last couple seasons. Robert Griffin III, the former football player, and Sam Ponder, the journalist, were fired, were released, were let go, and it's still sort of shaky on how that happened from the network leading up to football season starting. And questions have been asked, and innuendo has been thrown out there. Sage Steele says all will be revealed because apparently they believe that Sam Ponder was getting the Sage Steele treatment going forward. And one question that was asked literally by an ESPN guy, that being Paul Feinbaum, on his radio /TV show, say, what happened to Rob Griffin? Why did they get rid of that guy? And he basically had to say, I'm not in charge of ESPN. I like him. I like his commentary. We got to keep the company afloat. That's a company decision. I don't make those decisions on that end. We don't know why the decision was made and how it's going to affect going forward. But football is coming really soon. RG3, Robert Griffin III, seemingly being a fairly good commentator on football. Maybe not the best quarterback as he was touted to be, and maybe kind of a bit eccentric of a person. But his commentary has apparently been fairly solid. And Sam Ponder, nothing but nice things have been said about her and her work so far. So maybe there's some deep down hatred from folks. I don't really focus on the ESPN and the ABC broadcast for NFL sports. I'm more the Fox guy, I'm more a CBS guy, not those guys, to be honest. Maybe I'm missing something by not watching them, but now we all won't be watching them because they're gone until they find new NFL homes or sports homes fairly soon. We're running out of venues to put people on, but these guys with their talent should find something soon, and something hopefully better than just a podcast network. Sage Steele, you may not like her politics, you may not like her, but she deserves a better job than just work for Bill Maher in a podcast, my opinion. At number 7, the story is growing and growing and growing, but we're finding out more and more about the details of the death of Matthew Perry, and with that, a very massive arrest. 5 people involved in his death with ketamine in the process. Now, essentially what we have here are 5 people. I think it's 2 doctors, a couple people who were dealers. One of them is known as the ketamine queen because she has a way of getting access to ketamine in bad batches of it. And it wraps up with his personal assistant. That's Matthew Perry's personal assistant, who actually was the person shooting him up with the drug at various occasions. In fact, he is believed he was shot up 3 times that day before he died, and for the assistant to find him dead later in the evening in the hot tub. These 5 people have been arrested, charged with issues involving the death and the ketamine distribution. Apparently, this has been sort of in the works, where they've been trying to get people in a ketamine ring, a drug ring, essentially. Now, what's happened, which is the unexpected part, is the comments I've gotten from the viewers, the listeners, the news nerds, people who have read up on this stuff. And people were commenting in our TikTok and our YouTube shorts clips of these things in various places. They're not having it. They're not happy about it. They, want to have some passion, some sympathy, some love for the fans and family of Matthew Perry. But they also want to make sure it's acknowledged that Matthew Perry was a drug addict. And while that's a bad thing that could have been helped with, these weren't people helping out for better good. He was a drug addict who was shooting, who was looking for these things and shooting things up stuff that he knew he shouldn't have, especially after doing all the talks about how drugs and alcohol and being an addictive person was a bad thing. And he was essentially being two-faced. He was a drug addict looking for more, as opposed to this was just a simple accident. So a lot of people, a lot of comments, a lot of you folks out there saying there's a double standard, there's a two-faced thing here, and there is. It is. It's out there. But this is a story as it leads. More investigation going forward. More people may be actually arrested in the ring per se, and not so much for the death itself. 5 people arrested directly involved with Matthew Perry's death. happening this week with a big press conference. Which the biggest thing was, why did he need a press conference for this? Why didn't he just arrest him and give a news sheet and just move on with life? Why did it have to showboat on this one? That's a very good question. Speaking of showboating, specifically in this case, showboating may be what gets Gypsy Rose Blanchard back in prison because she violated parole. Specifically, she lied to a parole officer on some forms. That's essentially what's happening. It's don't want to say it's not all that serious, but when you're doing all these things and your life is in the public life because for some reason people are glomming onto you from a true crime story perspective, not from a actual life perspective. I'm saying this because her actual contributions to life are a little lacking as opposed to just being a part of a larger story. The story being that her and a boyfriend killed her mother, who was essentially killing her. Her mother suffered from Munchausen syndrome and was doing things to make her seem like she was sick and look sick. And so they killed her mother, which saved her life and sent her to prison. She was released. She's living this new life. She's got married from somebody in prison, and that's a weird thing. She's pregnant by another guy who's not her husband. She's doing Instagram things and all sorts of stuff that's essentially just putting herself out there. And then she says, she needs to back it up because she doesn't go back to prison. Essentially, that was already in the cards because she's done some lying to some parole officers based on being told some bad information from other people getting out of prison to kind of get away from things. We'll see what happens. Chances are, this is not El Chapo. This is not someone with that kind of level of crime going on. So chances are she won't go back to prison or go back for anything very serious. Because why? It's just going to bring up more stories and put her deeper into the conscience of people who just want to get overdosed on true crime stories, to be honest. This is one of those stories that, trust me, I care so little about. But when we put stories out there to see if you think they're conversational, you think Gypsy Rose Blanchard is conversational. All the tabloid stuff that she's done in this point. So we're talking about her today. We're also talking about Alex Murdaugh again, because he might actually get a new trial. Remember back when the trial went through and the jurors went through and talked about how they interacted with the clerk who wrote the book, and the book who essentially, the book is not he, the book is she, essentially writing the book, tampered with the witnesses, tampered with the jury, basically sort of putting seeds in their heads that he was really guilty, that there was no reason to say he wasn't because that's what's going on there. A Supreme Court is going to look into seeing whether jury tampering can be a part of the actual appeal. And maybe he can get a brand new trial. We will see what happens. There's a lot of evidence out there that, from my standpoint, from what I got a chance to see, makes it look like he's guilty, and a lot of things that he may be guilty of as well on the top side, on top of the money issues, which he's basically serving for and dealing with as well. But for this one in particular, the murder trial, he might get a second shot at this one, and we'll see what happens when that goes through. All because one person wanted to get famous off someone else, true crime, and may have mucked it up. Let's get extremely serious on this one for a moment. The WHO, World Health Organization, has declared monkeypox, now called MPOX, a public health emergency as newer strains spread in Africa. Doing deeper research for this, when we do the morning show for things you might not have heard, we take the headlines from the story that we pulled, and we basically pull a couple quick lines from it, put it in there to read through, and then we'll go through that and do some commentary from there. I actually had to do some extra research on this one because I was curious on what was going on, because I have a pandemic fetish, if you will, and this is terrible. This is just terrible. And we also had some stories later in the week about some MPOX cases being found outside of the African continent, which is where things get really scary, where we're at pandemic thought process right here. But 14,000 cases reported in the Democratic Republic of Congo by itself, and many cases around the African continents, African nations, causing people to really get serious about this one. And like I said, a few strains being found in Sweden, I believe. I don't have that note in front of me, going there as well. This is scary stuff, folks, and this is something that we should not be laughing about. We should be very serious about and see what's going to happen. We're just going to have to see how this thing plays out. Almost at the end for the dozen, and the number 11 story is a story that we're going to do quickly, but because there's not much to say, so just pull the Band-Aid off and go with it. A study finds that older adults do not benefit from moderate drinking. A very large study done on a large group of people over a good part of time finds that modern alcohol consumption, the beliefs that, a drink of wine every night or so actually has good positive effects for you. It actually probably doesn't, and it's probably making things worse going forward, or the alcohol benefits that are in there aren't making up for the goodness in there. You drinking the alcohol itself, which is bad, doesn't get negated by whatever good comes from the capsaicin or whatever chemical that's mixed into the booze itself. So for people who are older, obviously binge drinking is bad anyway, but people who are older thinking you're going to get something from a glass of wine other than some general relaxation, or you like to drink the taste of wine, probably not happening, because the effects of the alcohol is actually taking care of it. It doesn't say the same thing for younger adults, younger people who are drinking and of legal age. Of course, adolescence, it's bad for your development. In the younger age, you're probably drinking too much anyway, so the alcohol is killing your brain cells. And regardless, as you get older, you thinking that glass of wine is good for you. It's good for you for relaxation, maybe for hanging out at the club, maybe not so great for you health-wise. And the final story for this week's wrap-up is the demise of breakdancing. The 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles will not have breakdancing, which is kind of sad, because breakdancing essentially was a big deal, back in my day, East Coast, West Coast. Back before there was rap battles, and dance battles that were, over the top. Breakdancers would show up on the streets and do their breakdancing out there. And New York City and LA were two big places where the breakdancers were from. Breaking. It's there. It's in a movie about breakdancing in LA. There you go. LA will not see breakdancing as a sport. New things may pop up, including, I think, baseball is possibly be there for this year, softball, some other things as well. But breaking, the sport that garnered a whole lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs, and a lot of head scratching, if you will, bit of controversy, is gone. We aren't talking so much about the controversy that is the gymnastic stuff and taking the bronze medal away from one person to give it to a collusion of other folks. But we are going to make fun of this person and this outfit and the whole breakdancing legacy that was one summer. Breakdancing, RIP, 2024, 2024. Let's wrap up the news and get into the wrap-up part of the show. Here's where we do the promotion stuff. Here's where we start doing our stuff where we have to, sell ourselves. And hopefully we can sell ourselves fairly well and sell ourselves on our news coverage. One tool we use for news coverage is Ground News, and you should use it too as a news nerd. Ground News is an aggregator like us, but not do they just pull stories and kind of make fun of them. They pull stories and give you actual deep detail on what's going on behind the story. In fact, they have a meter for every story that's out there that tells you how it's being covered and who it's being covered by, and those coverages, who owns those sites, who owns those papers, owns those networks. So if you have a story, it will tell you how it's being covered by certain venues, from the Democratic side, the left, if you will, from the Republican side, the right, if you will, and more or less the neutral sides in the middle. It'll give you a storyline and how it's being covered for every storyline going forward. There's even a blind spot feature where you click on blind spots. They give you stories that are overly covered by one side or the other, and you can see what stories you may be missing if you are tending to focus more on one side or another. The stories that you see all the time, you'll see why. The stories you don't see at all, and you'll see why. And you can get a great deal on this one. This is news that needs to be taken care of, news that needs to be paid for, and you can pay for it without very much money. You can get your coverage, extra coverage from Ground News for as little as $1 a month, or get their full package for less than $10 a month, and take good care of Ground News. Take care of us in the process, because one, we get a small commission from you signing up for Ground News, and two, we need them for our service as well. We need them to check some of the stories and see where we're going things. So we need Ground News around. We pay a subscription for the Conversation Project into Ground News because we use it. Things we use, things we love, we put money into it. We hope you will as well and support us in the process. Go to our link at our website because it is an affiliate link. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news. Ground News is a news service and a sponsor that many services that do news seek out. I seek it out. Many services that I look at and websites that do news headlines, either in satirical manner or in deep diving manner, look for Ground News for a way to support them and a way to be a part of them and promote them and get some pluses and a positive. We look for a way to do more promotion of ground news specifically, and we are doing it by offering you a chance to sign up for their actual app and platform. In the process, we get a small commission, which helps us, but seeing them stay alive in this day and age where the news agencies, some are sputtering up all over the place. Many of them are dying very quickly. We need ground news. We need them around for quite some time. Quick reminder of the Conversation Project. We're going to go over all these links again, but this is the high part of the Conversation Project and what we do and how we do it. Go to our website, thisistheconversationproject.com, and you can see all the details of things we do all the time. Our daily show, our thing that gets us through the days, is the thing called Things You Might Not Have Heard. Every weekday morning, right around 6:20 or so, we produce a live to tape stone. We tape it just like this one and send it out there in a live feed for you to see news stories from the previous day, from Mondays to weekend. And these are stories that you deem as conversational. Our feeds, and we'll talk about those some more in a bit, are on Facebook and x.com/th_conversation and facebook.com/thisisconversationproject. When you go to our feeds, when you check on your feeds and your Facebook and X, we have news stories we're posting every 50 minutes for you to check out that are coming in your stuff. So see what we're talking about. Engage in the stories. You just simply click the like button. Click the emoji face stuff that goes along with it. Share it with friends. Comment on the stories. The higher a story gets engagement with, the higher engagement store, the better chance of talking about it. Now, we've had to scrap the sort of scientific method because the way that the algorithms for both Facebook and X work, it's hard to get that data because data is worth money. So we're still paying both those folks money, but not getting the same data. So we're doing it old school. We're just basically scanning the numbers, going for the big ones and pulling the best ones. So a little less scientific stuff, a little less mojo, but it makes this thing more fun, if you will. Now, so every day we'll give you some great top stories that you deem as conversational. Every week we give you some of the biggest ones to remind you which ones we lived through. And that happens all the time. Also go to our website and see more details like the clips of the bigger stories so you can get deeper in detail of those. Some other stories that we don't have time to, we miss in the morning that kind of come out there, just sort of get in my craw, and some other features as well. You can also visit our sponsors. You can become a partner. We'll talk about that in literally mere moments, and do all those great things. The most important things you should be doing, you must be doing for us, is following us on the feeds on Facebook and X, and of course, emailing us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Now, partnerships. Go to our website, click on the partnerships link. You can be a partner and you can help us do things better. You can be a sponsor and buy one-time things. You can be a one-time supporter and do a quick one-time donation, or you can use our platform at Buy Me a Coffee and become a coffee sponsor. We have various levels. These are some right now. The $5 level is at cup of coffee, and spare change is $1. Joy Winters at $1, and Harold Braxton, Colby Green, and Eldon Kidd at the $5 level. If you want to help support us, $16 a month right now. We can use much more. Trust me, I'm saying that. But the money that's been coming from these folks and the support they're giving in the comments they get in special chats, let's call them special chats, special behind the scenes stuff, is breakthrough. It's lovely. It's glorious. But you, of course, are also part of it. If you don't deem us worthy of your money, or you can't quite afford us at the moment, your contributions are just as warranted. Thanks very much for the partners. But anyone can play. All the news nerds are involved by going to our website. As we said, this is conversationproject.com, and email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. All comments are read. All comments are taken into account. Some of them very not so nice things. Some of them actually have more validity than you think up front, even though you're trying to be funny. Some of them we take to heart and we work on those as well. Some of the bad things we just sort of ignore and go get a drink. In the meantime, as we say, the feeds, facebook.com/thisisconversationproject and x.com/th_conversation. Follow us on those feeds. Follow us, and when you go to check your Facebook, your X, we'll be in there. So go to our pages every so often and see what big things you might be missing. But when we pop up in your feeds, see what we're talking about. Engage in the stories and let us know if you like them, hate them. The more engagement, whether love or hate, better chance we have of talking about them in things like this. And this thing like this is done. The weekly wrap up for the week ending August 17, 2024. Thank you for spending your weekend with us. Thank you for spending your full week with us, because we do this every day. And even though we don't do the daily stuff, the daily rundowns and stuff for Saturday and Sunday, we put it all together for Monday. We are paying attention. We are commenting. We're chatting. We're doing what we can to have conversations. Hopefully, if life gets a little better, and if you're following us as a partner, you know what life is all about. We want to do more expanded things, more chatting with you stuff, more live stuff with you. It's a pretty busy week, so hanging out for the Democratic Convention, doing live stuff, that's not happening. In fact, I'm going to miss a bunch of it because of a pretty heavy week. But we're going to do what we can to keep an eye on the Kamala commotion, the Kamala speech, as we did for the Trump speech. And, if we're lucky, we'll have enough stuff to bash for that one. If we're really lucky, she'll have a great speech and she'll inspire us to do great things. But we're about content, so if we're really lucky, she'll do some sort of flub and we'll have something to talk about. That's what we really are about. We want good things. We also want content. And the crazier it is, the better content. Be a content junkie, be a news nerd, and hang out with us anytime you can. Stop by our website and let us know what we're doing. Life is great, even when your life may not be seeming so great at the moment. So remember that. Keep that in mind every single day, and be with us when you can. You can be with us every single day by checking out us on our feeds, seeing what stories are interesting. Even the weekend, check us out every so often to pump up some of those weekend numbers. And we'll join you again, once again, for another edition of the Weekly Wrap-Up. We'll see what stories will last a week as the best stories of the week. And Monday morning for our next edition of Things You Might Not Have Heard.